Now, special demographics of Black consumers are really important. And one of the most important is the Black consumer is younger than the white consumer by 10 years. The average Black consumer is 34 years of age. The average white consumer is 44 years of age. That's extremely important because it's a younger market. That younger market is going to be there longer and going to be able to do more. Now, what you have here is also growth rate in the population. We have now the shift of population from whites to a majority Black, brown, red, and yellow. And this figures in consumer spending habits. And so over 20 years, Black consumption has increased by 5%, while white consumption has increased by 3%. And this is due to declining birth rates. And they're going to decline more. And so when you're building a consumer cooperative or any kind of business, then that's part of what you have to draw from. This younger Black consumer comes out of a culture whose ethos is creativity. And therefore, it is natural for the younger consumer to be wired into smartphones and high tech in general, and of course, brand aware. The young consumer, the Black young consumer, is highly digital. They're more likely to own a smartphone, and they use them 12% more than white Americans. That is the nature of your culture. You're creative by nature. And I really want to say this in terms of an area in which young Black people can really prosper in the economy. That area is computer technology. I'm going to have on this show one of these days one of my former students who is a computer technician. He's also running a series of coffee shops that he's setting up as a business. And he trains young Blacks in the whole gamut of computer technology. When they're finished with his training, they can go directly into the computer industry, which has very few of us. But what's interesting about Blacks in computers, because of the creative nature of African American culture, is that young Blacks tend to be programmers. They tend to be the ones that create programs because creativity is a part of their nervous system. And even young Blacks who have criminal records, they can often get jobs through this skill set. So this is an area. This is also a good area for business, in terms of setting up businesses. And I know some of our people are doing that will train Blacks in computer technology. And all they'll be doing is enhancing their skills because they're going to have young people coming in with a lot of skills already. Another feature of African American culture that drives Black consumer taste is, again, this is tied to humanism. And it's tied to the philosophy of the African American that is highly political. We're a race-conscious people, and it drives our politics. And so one of the things about Black consumers, if you're doing a consumer cooperative, you've got to really appreciate this, is that the Black consumer expects the brand to align with their values, especially support for social causes. Very important. So if you've got a brand that is doing something for Black people, and at the same time is meeting a need for them, they're more likely to support that because that's a part of the culture. You know what I mean? That's extremely important. Kaepernick, the fact that he got these big ads and stuff and a lot of money, promotional stuff, the people in the industry that pushed him knew that they were going to profit from this because he's become a folk hero. And they're associating their brand, their tennis shoes, with a folk hero. Blacks are going to buy that. Yeah, it's opportunistic, but the fact is it's also smart. And if you do the same thing, it can benefit you. When it comes to Black consumer markets, surveys show that Black consumers are prepared to shift about $260 billion, or 30% of their spending, on new products, new businesses, and new services that better meet their needs. This is a huge market to draw from for Blacks who are going into business. Black businesses have a high success rate when they provide an excellent product, an excellent service, and they meet Black cultural needs. An example, and by the way, I want to do a shout out for Barbados. They've just had their ceremony where they have moved out of the Commonwealth status where the Queen was a head of state to a republic status where they have their own president and their prime minister. And I want to compliment the Prime Minister of Barbados for that. And one of the people she made as a national hero was Rihanna. And what's interesting about Rihanna, she's not only a singer who Jay-Z helped, she's a businesswoman. And she came up with a brand for Black skincare, for Black women and women of color. And her brand, check this out, this shows she knows her people. Her brand services or provides skin products for 50 shades of Black and people of color skin tones. 50 shades. Now that's somebody who's really into knowing us, because we definitely are into color consciousness. But guess what? That business is valued at $1 billion. And she puts a lot of money into her people, Barbados, her people. So I really want to take my hat off to Prime Minister Motley, who is one beautiful sister. That is one conscious sister. And they are now setting up, they're going to build a major cultural center designed by the brother who designed the African American Cultural Center in Washington, D.C. He's the best architect in the world. It's really a beautiful design. And it's smart on her part because it's going to bring in tourists, because that's usually one of the things that tourists come to see is various kinds of historical sites. But I just want to say that this sister's just conscious on a whole lot of levels. You hear me? Conscious. Bad. I really like her. Yeah, my wife's from Barbados. But I mean, if she was from another island and wasn't doing good, you wouldn't hear me saying this. I'm saying this because, the sister's culturally grounded. She's hooking Barbados up with Africa to do various kinds of trade things and stuff. And she is educating her people on their African roots, which is heavily Asante, Ghanaian, but also Igbo and others, but heavily Ghanaian. And she's smart, real smart move. And when she's getting criticized for letting the Chinese do something, she's telling the people, on BBC, a sister who did that, she said, hey, are you telling me that we don't know how to manage our own affairs? We can deal with any country in the world we want to. You know what I mean? just because America's in competition with them, we're supposed to give up our relationships as a sovereign people in a sovereign country. But she's an example of the black bourgeoisie that identifies with their people's culture and loves her people. And that is generally the case in Barbados. That is one of the middle class groups that serves their people. And I might point out, they're not radical. But if you love your people, that's a radical statement in and of itself. You know what I mean? They ain't into pocketing money. And the people end up being hurt. So I'm really proud of that. And watching their little Passover ceremony earlier this week was really nice to see. And just as I'm having this conversation, the Barbadian Parliament is having the same discussion on cooperatives. How do you use the economic power of people who set up stalls and sell their stuff? How do you give them support? And how do you draw from the economic ingenuity of African people? That's what Africa needs, you know what I mean? And that's what we need here. Black business people need to be able to have sources of money. And by the way, another source for pooling capital that we don't practice, but in the Caribbean it's practiced, it comes directly out of Africa. Some call it the partner system. It is a system where people put money into a pot and it moves around. And so they're able to use that pot to finance something. In the UK, it's used heavily. In the Caribbean, it's used heavily. So that's something we'd have to revise. That's not something we've been practicing. But we need various ways to pool money so our people can get it to set up businesses.